Hi, you're listening to This Is Not Your Practice Life. I'm your host, Macy Renee, and we are going on a journey together, my friends. I'm a certified life and emotional intelligence coach. And if you really want to step into your highest self, there are a few non-negotiables you're going to have to learn, and I am just the person to help you do it. No matter your past, I'm here to help you create a more fulfilling future. So stick around with me. Not only will I teach you how to navigate your brain's daily mind drama, but I'll help you actually understand your mind, your emotions, why you do the things you do, and why others do the things they do. Most importantly, I'll help you build the self-awareness skills to create whatever results you want. It's never too late to change the trajectory of your life. After all, this is not your practice life. Hello and good morning, you guys. Welcome back to another episode of This Is Not Your Practice Life podcast. I'm Macy Renee, and I'm thrilled to have you on the podcast this morning. It is October 10th, which means it is my birthday, and this year I'm celebrating year 31. It is so exciting. I don't feel weird about getting older. I love the wisdom that comes with getting older. And so it's not something that at this point in time that I'm dreading. It actually feels really, really good. And I wouldn't trade where I am now with where I was even 8 years ago for anything. So I'm excited to be talking with you guys on my birthday. And for fun, I thought something that I could do to kind of spice it up a little bit would be to have a poll on what you guys wanted to hear for this episode. So over on Instagram and Facebook, I put up 3 topics to choose from. And it was basically a unanimous vote to do the topic that we're going to do tonight, which is the discomforts of outgrowing the old you to step into your next level. So we had a lot of votes for each topic, but this one definitely won by a long shot. And then I got a few messages also where it was like, oh, please do all of them. And of course I will. But today we're going to focus on this one. And if you guys know me really well, if you've attended any live coaching trainings or webinars, or you are a client of mine or have been a client of mine, you know that I'm a very visual learner. So I love teaching with visuals. And since the podcast is not able to be a visual at this point in time, I'm going to do my best to try to explain this in the way that I see it in my mind and the way that I think about it whenever I am trying to get to the next level version of even myself. So I hope that it helps you. I hope that you enjoy the episode, and let's get started, shall we? So here's the thing that I think we forget about, going for growth in our life is that it's going to oftentimes feel very, very uncomfortable. And I think intellectually and logically, we know this. We know that change is difficult. We know that growth is hard, but we don't realize how hard our brain fights for us to stay exactly the same. Now, if you attended my most recent webinar, then you were taught a concept that I teach my clients and that I have covered briefly on the podcast about the 95 versus 5%. But beyond that, it's really important to know that the brain wants you to be who you've always been. The problem with that is that the brain in which you've made your decisions up to this point in your life cannot be the brain that you take with you for the next level of your life. So when I am talking even highest self work, who you are now and where you want to be even 5 years from now, you can't have the exact same brain patterns, the same way of thinking, the same way of feeling. So it's very important to know that the reason that this process feels very uncomfortable is because it's almost like divorcing your current brain, divorcing your current way of thinking, way of feeling, way of behaving, and really saying goodbye to the results you're used to getting in your life, which is very uncomfortable. So I give silly analogies a lot of times with my clients, but I feel like honestly, they have a lot of breakthroughs whenever I draw it out, because I think a lot of the people that I coach are also visual learners, or they don't realize how much of a visual learner they are until I pull out my dry erase, board and markers and start drawing things, and then stuff starts clicking with, maybe some more challenging concepts. So I'm going to do my best to try and have you visualize what I see in my mind when I am thinking of this kind of work. And it might not make any sense to you, but do your best to try and be open to what I'm going to try and portray. So, when I think about humans growing, I often think about a heart rate monitor machine that basically lives above our heads, right? Or lives within our body. So, the same way that you would walk in a hospital and see a patient who is connected to oxygen and heart rate monitors, you see their lines going up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down. Okay. And really, within each of us as humans, we have that going on within our body. Okay. We have that happening, different wavelengths, frequencies, energetic vibrations happening at all times based on the things that we're thinking and the emotions we're having and the energy that we give off. It's the reason why you will get around some people sometimes and you'll be like, gosh, they have amazing energy. I feel so good around them. And then you'll get around other people and you're like, ugh, they drain my energy. They take so much of my energy. Why? Jesus, why? Right? And it's because of the different ways that we emit energy. And so the way that I think about it is the same way that it shows up on a heart rate monitor. You've got some people that have big lines, right? You've got some people that have shorter lines, and everybody's lines are a little bit different. But for the purpose of this podcast and trying to visualize it, in the most simple way possible, we're going to talk about it in two different ways. And basically, one wavelength is going to look like zigzags and stars, and the other one is going to look like loops and hearts. Okay, so I know that you might be like, Macy, this makes no sense. Where are you going with this? But just bear with me. So I want you to think of all of the decisions you've made to get you to where you are in your life right now. Okay, the family that you have, the marriage or relationships that you have, the job that you have, the friendships that you have, the person you are, how well you do coping, how well you handle things in life emotionally, mentally, physically, your health, your money, your well-being. All of that contributes to a frequency that you have in your body. And we're going to call it zigzags and stars. Okay, so if you were to look at your little monitor above your head or in your body, let's just pretend that where you are in your life right now, you see zigzags and stars on that monitor. Okay, now what's interesting is that when you start to become a little bit more aware and you start to say things like, I want to grow, or I want, to have more fulfilling friendships, I want to make more money in my career, or I want to be happy in my career, or I want a relationship that feels really good with communication and trust, or I want to achieve certain goals and dreams. Okay, when you have the awareness to say, where I'm at now is not necessarily where I want to be forever, what you essentially allude to is that zigzags and stars, my vibration of zigzag and stars, is where I currently am, but it's not where I want to be forever. And so when you are imagining where you want to be, let's just say that where you want to be are loops and hearts. Okay, it's a different vibration. It's not bad, it's not wrong, it's not, neither good or bad or better or any of those things. It's just different. So there's loops and hearts where you want to be, and there's zigzags and stars where you are now. Okay. And so what a lot of people think is like, okay, I just want the loops in the hearts, which is maybe like better communication with your partner, more presence as a mom or dad, being able to be more present with your children, more money, better job, more fulfilling career, all of the things. So we logically and intellectually want it, and there may even be a piece of us that believes that we can have it, but our brain will say getting or going from zigzags and stars to loops and hearts is going to be way too uncomfortable because we're not that person. We're not the person that has the capacity to operate at loops and hearts on our little heart rate monitor, on our energy monitor, right? And a lot of times what we do is we believe our brain. Like we really deeply believe our brain, like, oh, yeah, like that would be really, really hard. There are a million obstacles I would have to overcome in order to, have those things. And so we will oftentimes talk ourselves out of the very things that we're wanting. And we will tell ourselves that we're not able to get it. And that's why at the beginning of this episode, I said it's really important to know that the brain that you have now cannot be the same. You cannot take the same thinking and processing in order to change that energetic vibration. Okay, you have to grow even as you're making conscious decisions. But a lot of times where people go wrong is they make decisions from familiarity and from comfort. Okay, so let's talk about what discomforts you're going to feel when you're outgrowing the old you. Okay, and I'm going to try and give examples for each. So, one of the first ones is you will feel discomfort in leaving old thoughts behind. So, your current thoughts, whether conscious or subconscious, right now, are serving you in some way. They're stories that your brain keeps and holds close so that nothing in your life really has to change and you don't have to feel uncomfortable. So leaving old thoughts behind may look like we'll never have more money than we do now. We'll never have a fulfilling relationship, or I'm never going to be worthy of love. I'm never going to be worthy of someone who really fulfills my heart in a relationship, right? Like there are a million thoughts you can be having that, even though they're painful, are serving your brain in some way. So I see this even in consults, right? Like people will oftentimes come to a consult with me where their brain has started the growth process. That's what makes someone get on a consult, right? Like their brain in that moment grew enough to get them on the phone to talk about what's going on in their life. Okay, so in that moment, they stretched and they went from the zigzag and stars to almost like this mid-range of like, I don't know, squiggly lines, okay, where they're like, I'm going to try and reach and grow to a new level of myself. But then what happens oftentimes is when it comes to making a decision that is new and unfamiliar, like maybe it's spending the money on themselves, right? Or it is the commitment of knowing that they're going to talk about whatever they want to talk about for 12 weeks or 24 weeks, because that's how I offer one-on-one sessions, or, even in the group program. If their brain offers them thoughts like, I have trouble being committed, I don't spend money on myself, or I don't put myself first. I could use this, investment on my family, or whatever their thought is. If they keep that pattern of thinking, they will make decisions from who they've been, which is stay the same, because in order to grow, that would mean leaving the thoughts behind of I can't spend this on myself, or I can't invest this on myself, or I can't I can't, be committed and follow through. So people's thinking will oftentimes keep them in the exact same place. Same thing with relationships. I'm not worthy of love, or, I'm never going to be a good communicator, or I'm a boring individual to be around. Even though those thoughts are painful, if they're thoughts your brain has had over and over and over again, it feels like a belief that is true. It just feels like the truth to your brain. And if you allow those thoughts that are subconscious and ingrained to stay there, okay, then you're going to make decisions from that place, meaning that as much as you want the loops and hearts, right? You can't get there until you're willing to leave behind those old thought patterns that aren't serving you. So that means you would have to think new things, like I'm worthy of love. I am a good communicator. I'm fun to be around. I am, worthy of investing in myself. Things like that. So what I will see on a consult a lot of times are people who are almost there, and then their brain takes them back into comfort for whatever reason, and their brain tells them, let's just be the same, right? Let's just stay the same. And it's the difference between a lot of times people who will move forward or don't because of the comfortability in, whether or not they're willing to outthink the current patterns of their brain. So that brings me to number 2. Another discomfort of outgrowing the old you is being willing to leave old patterns behind. So what patterns do you notice in your life, and are you making conscious decisions to change those patterns? So patterns that I think of immediately are like maybe dating the same type of individual, right? That is not good for you. Or it could be a pattern of thinking, like constant negative thinking. It could be a pattern of your money habits, right? Like you get a lump sum of money, you spend it immediately. You get a lump sum of money, you spend it immediately, right? Like anything that you notice is not serving you. So our brain really struggles to leave those old patterns and ways of thinking behind because we've made it a part of who we are. We've made it a part of how we make decisions. So to tell the brain we're going to do something different is a big challenge. Another thing that feels very uncomfortable for us when we're outgrowing the old version of ourselves is leaving our old coping mechanisms behind. So up until this point, your brain has learned ways of coping. So going back into that silly example of like, let's say your energetic vibration looks like zigzags and stars, right? You have coping mechanisms within that vibration that have worked for you, even if they're unhealthy. Maybe it's drinking excessively, smoking, right? Buffering with your phone, watching a bunch of Netflix, sex, porn, shopping excessively, going to the gym, overeating, whatever it is, right? Like people have their vices of what makes them feel better. And then let's say your highest self, the version of you that desires to eat healthy, stop drinking, find better ways of coping, like maybe meditation or walking or just healthier outlets. That version of you would be the loops and the hearts, okay? And what your brain is going to do is say, well, we can't just leave our old coping mechanisms behind. We've carried these for X amount of years. That would be really, really hard. So your brain is going to offer all of the reasons you need to stay exactly as you are. And it's going to try its best to have you make decisions that you've always made. So let's say you want to stop smoking cigarettes, right? Every time you feel stressed or every time you feel anxious, your highest self, being the loops and the hearts, might be like, let's not smoke, let's do something else instead, like go for a walk, go for a run, whatever the healthy mechanism is that you've decided, because that's what your highest self wants. Your old current self, right? The version of you that is going to have grips on who you've been is going to say, yes, but the cigarette has always immediately eased our pain. So we should probably hold on to that way of coping because it's the easiest thing for us to do for ourselves. So when you're trying to grow, you're really fighting a battle against yourself. Okay. So far we've talked about how when you want to grow, you have to be willing to leave old thought patterns behind. So the way that you can, work on this is, how would I currently make this decision if I stay the same version of myself? And how would I make this decision if I knew I wanted to change the trajectory of my life? There's two different options that will oftentimes surface. There's the decision that's going to keep you exactly where you're at, feeling exactly what you're feeling, behaving the way that you're behaving. And there's a decision that's going to take you to the next level. And usually that decision that's going to take you to the next level version of yourself is going to scare you, and it's going to feel very uncomfortable, and it's going to be something you wouldn't normally do. And if that's the case, that's when you know you're heading in the right direction, right? When you really check in with your body and say, I want the loops and hearts vibration, but I've been operating at the zigzags and stars for X amount of years. So what way of thinking is going to get me to the loops and the hearts, right? How do I get that on my little energy monitor? Okay. Again, leaving old patterns behind. So what would be an old way that I've made decisions and patterns that I've had? And what would I do in, as my highest self? I think is probably the easiest way to differentiate this. What would I do as my highest self to make sure that I don't keep staying in the loop of old patterns? And then again, being willing to leave old coping mechanisms behind. So which ways have I numbed myself or buffered, or which ways have I been, trying to handle my stress in the past or in my current reality? And is it actually helping me, or is it something that I would like to do differently? And if so, what decision would I make in the moment right now, even when I'm really struggling? Okay, because there's going to be your brain's old way of thinking and how you've always done it in the past. And then there's going to be your new way of thinking and how you're wanting to do it. And that's where you're fighting to get to, but it's going to be a war within yourself, okay? Another discomfort of outgrowing the old version of you is knowing that your relationships are going to feel different. So likely in your life right now, you're surrounded by people who have a very similar vibration as you. So let's say, looking at the zigzags and stars, not everybody around you might have zigzag and stars, but they might have zigzags and squares and zigzags and circles and zigzags and, whatever other shapes. Okay. And so you surround yourself a lot of times by people who are on very similar vibrations as you, very similar interests, ways of coping, ways of talking, speaking, thinking. It's the natural part of our humanness because we like to feel like we have a tribe, like we have our people. When you decide that you're wanting to grow, this is probably the most discomfort that people feel and recognize when they start doing self-awareness work, mindset work, emotional intelligence work, is that your vibration does start to shift because your eyes are set on the loops and the hearts. And even if you don't automatically move to loops and hearts, your vibration might change to, I don't know, let's just call them loop-de-loops. Your vibration might change to loop-de-loops. And what you will notice in a lot of your relationships, your friendships, even family, is that people will pick up on it and people will notice. They won't always be able to pinpoint and exactly describe what exactly they're noticing within you, but usually you will have people in your life that will maybe say, oh my gosh, I'm noticing that you're changing, you look amazing, you're glowing. Or you'll have the people who are very bothered by it. Like, I don't understand what's wrong with you or why you're so different or why you're acting quote unquote brand new, right? You'll have people in your life that are very bothered by it. And I think I've talked about this in a previous podcast, but what they're really saying is, I physically feel an energetic difference in you. You used to operate as zigzag and stars, and now I don't even know what you are, but it's a big struggle for me. It's like something has changed. And we often find a lot of trouble with this when we're battling our old self and our new self. So I have clients that have maybe recently gone through a divorce, or they're in the process of a divorce, or they're in a new relationship with someone and their ex is having a hard time with it. And what we talk about a lot of times is, it's the fact that your energetic vibration is different. If you wanted new things for yourself, you left behind toxic patterns, you had to become a new version of yourself to attract a partner that was different and leave your old life behind. And the old life is going to come at you with claws saying, I don't like this version of you. I don't know who you are. Please come back and be the same. And what my clients are often fighting against is this tug of war between their brains saying, yeah, let's go back to being the same because that was easiest, versus no, let's stay here at this new energetic vibration where life feels really good and life's looking really good. However, the old parts of my life are still trying to bring me down. And so we do a lot of work around that because they've outgrown the old version of themselves, but that doesn't mean that their brain isn't fighting like hell every single day to get them to go back to old patterns, old ways of thinking, old ways of coping. So really with coaching, it's the accountability in, I see my clients' brains trying to go back to old patterns, and we coach really hard on staying at the loops in the hearts or getting to the vibration of loops and hearts because they've told me that's where they want to be. So anytime I notice that their thoughts, feelings, behaviors are not going to get them to quote unquote loops and hearts, then we're coaching their brain really, really hard on understanding why and trying to, bypass that challenge within their brain, or really work through, I shouldn't say bypass, but like really work through the root of that, problem that they're having that's trying to take them away from their ultimate goals. Another discomfort of outgrowing the old you will be the challenge of thinking at higher levels that push you. I would say that this is the most challenging part about being coached, is that you really have to be willing to hear ideas and see things that maybe your brain doesn't want to see. Because seeing it is, after you see something, then you can never unsee it. Okay, so after something is brought to your awareness, you can't unsee it. So the only option is to actively choose to keep that pattern, knowing the result you're getting, or change. And I think that is why sometimes people have a hard time hiring a coach, right? Because a coach shows you the blind spots. And, by showing you the blind spots, you get to decide whether or not you keep the pattern or you don't. But it's almost like if you keep it, it's that phrase of like ignorance is bliss, right? Where you're wanting to pretend you never saw it so that you didn't have to change it. And now once you've seen it and you can't unsee it, the only option is to almost keep the pattern going, which, wanting something to change and remaining in the pattern of doing it the same thing over and over again is the definition of insanity. So you can either do that, or you truly have to push that discomfort further and say, I'm going to think at a higher level than I'm used to thinking. And that was always the hardest part for me when I was getting coached, was being pushed out of my current level of thinking, because my level of thinking was often in victim mentality. And so to have to think in a way that wasn't victim mentality was really, really hard for me in the beginning. So that's another thing that can be very difficult when you're growing. And last but not least, another discomfort when you're leaving the old version of you behind is just the work that you will need to do around your emotional resilience and your awareness, which is really what this podcast is about, right? Like, again, it's becoming more aware of of yourself, your brain, your patterns, your emotions, the things you're holding into your body. And it can be really challenging to move through that. It is not an easy feat. And I think sometimes doing this work, it just needs to be recognized as a really big deal because our brain fights so hard to keep us exactly where we're at that it's just not easy. It's just not easy. So if you're doing this work, just pat yourself on the back and really celebrate yourself because you had to fight like hell to get here. Really, truly, you had to fight your brain to get here. And I really believe that with every single client as well. Like, for some people, financially, it's an easy decision. For some people, it's not. But at the end of the day, everybody fights their own brain to get to this position. So if you're here, congratulate yourself because you've upped your vibration just in making that decision. You truly have, because the brain that, again, you brought with you here to this point in your life cannot be the brain that takes you to the next level. You have to think differently and do things differently. And, you've done that. And so it's a really big deal. So here are some things I want to leave you with. Questions that you can reflect upon and ask yourself in order to kind of move through the discomfort of outgrowing the old version of you. And that is asking yourself, who do I want to be? So this is kind of stepping into that highest self work. Like, who is your highest self? Who do you want to be? What do you imagine for your life? What would be different than it is now? Do you communicate more easily with your partner? Do you communicate, in an emotionally mature way? Do you learn how to hold space? Do you make more money? Are you happier in your career? Like, what does your highest self really mean? Because it's different for every single person, right? So just reflect upon that. Who do you want to be, right? And why? Love your reasons. Why do you want that for your life? Like, figure out your reasons and really decide from a place of love and self-love, because when you love your reasons for why you're going to do something or why you're not, that is making a more empowered decision. So I always tell clients, I tell people that get on consults with me, really even friends that are in the midst of making a decision, I always encourage them to, whatever decision you make sure that you love your reasons for that decision, whether it is a yes or a no. Why would you say yes? What would it give you by saying yes? Why would you say no? What would, it mean for you to say no? And when you think about that, do you love your reasons? And if you can't love your reasons, reevaluate, right? But if you do love your reasons for your decision, then I think that oftentimes you're on the right track if you really, trust yourself and trust that you're making decisions from a place of growth. Okay, how is your life different? Like, how is who you want to be and where you are currently? How is that different than who you are being right now? So I don't actually know if that question just made sense, but I had written down, how is it different than who you are right now? So what I mean by that is there is the current version of you, and then there's where you want to be, and how is it different? So the gap work is kind of how I think of this question. What needs to be done in order to take you from who you're being right now to where you want to be or who you want to be? And then what decisions would you need to make differently in order to do that? And the key here is the awareness of knowing your brain is going to try to have you make decisions from who you've been, not who you're trying to be. So when you're thinking, okay, I want this old version of me to be able to die off so that I can step into my highest, best, most amazing self, so that I can, create the life that I'm wanting, create the things that feel really good to me, a life that feels really good to me. What does that mean? What does that look like? What decisions do you need to make differently than you normally would in order for that to be attainable? Okay. So those are the things I want you to think about. And if you have any questions, of course, reach out. If I could support you in any way, just know you can always schedule a consult for free, 60 minutes to chat. We can talk about the different options I have to help you, see if it's a good fit or not. And yeah, I hope that you will have an amazing week this week. And for the topics that were also voted on but did not win today, don't worry, they will be coming down the pipeline. So I can't wait to speak to you next week. I hope you have a great day. Bye. Hey there. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of This Is Not Your Practice Life podcast. If you'd like to connect on social media, you can find me on both Instagram and Facebook at Macy Renee Coaching. And if you want to stay up to date on all of my offers, announcements, and inspirational emails, you can join my email list at macyrenee.com. In addition, if there's a way that I can further support you in your coaching journey, you can schedule a free 60-minute consult at macyrenee.com anytime you want so we can discuss the best options for you. I look forward to seeing you next week, and I hope you have an amazing day. Bye.